At 17 years old, I was picked up on a charge 3 down from capital murder. I was going to jail for 7 to 10 years. I was lucky. I just went for so many months. I turned 18 years old. I got out of jail and I was waiting for the bus just a few blocks down from the prison to come and take me back to my hometown. All of a sudden, I looked up and there were a carload of my friends came to pick me up. I got in the car. They said, "Hey, Brian, we heard through the grapevine, man, you're getting out." I got in the car. And before I even realized that I was out of jail, I was high up on morphine, standing in the back of a Kentucky Fried Chicken joint, ready to blow somebody's head off if they just took the wrong move, before I realized I was out of jail. About 11 weeks, we went out and hit up caper after caper, score after score, hitting up crokers, busting in joints, sticking up joints, robbing jewelry stores, whatever we could. About 11 weeks later, I pulled into my hometown. Everybody was going up to the Lakers to celebrate. "Hey, man, what a haul, we got away." You know, my father was having church. He didn't even know if I was in jail or out of jail or even still alive. I thought, oh, I'm just going to drop by and let him know how good things are doing. And so guess what? I said, man, I'm going to let him know how everything's going so good for me. And I hit my pocket. I had a roll of $100 bills in one pocket, a roll of narcotics in the other. I thought, hey, man, I've got it made. I drove across town and jumped out for the first time in months. And I walked in that church. My father stopped them singing and said, "Brian, it's so good to see you. Bless you." Everyone in the church turned around and looked at me, and I could read all over their face, "Hey, man, look at that thief, crook, lying, cheating, dope-pushing, dope-using preacher's son." I thought, you bunch of phony hypocrites. All of a sudden, Mr. Kennedy got up to preach, and as he was preaching, I thought, oh, I've been here long enough. I got up on my feet and started for the door. I heard something. I thought, this is strange. I spun around and looked at the front, and here the preacher was standing at the front, and he was pointing right at me, and he said, "Brian, don't go. Jesus loves you. Hey, man, won't you give him a chance?" I turned around and said, "Hey, man, you on some kind of bum trip?" And I walked out the door and started going down the steps. Walking down the front steps of the church, all of a sudden, I heard something. I wondered, what's happening, man? And somebody grabbed my arm and pulled me back, and here the preacher ran right into the church after me. Here's what he said, "Brian, listen, man, I don't know what's happened to me, but I feel in my heart that if you don't pray and let the Lord help you, you're going to wish that you did, or hey, wait a minute, maybe you won't have another chance." I grabbed the preacher and threw him down and said, "Take your garbage hands off of me. I'm too tough to pray, man. I don't need religion, man. What do you take me for, a Sunday school sissy? Come on, man, what's the matter? You freaking out? Don't shed any tears for me." And I turned around, walked over top of him, got in my car, blew across town. I walked in the bootleggers. I said, "Hey, shoot me a screwdriver, drop me a tab." They looked up. "What's happening, Brian?" I said, "I'm doomed for hell. The booger man's going to get me." Listen to me, I don't have time, but the booger man did get me. 5 nights later, we were planning the biggest armed robbery in my hometown. I made a mistake and my own friends turned against me. They came at me. I hit the floor. Before somebody blew my head off, I got out into the hallway and started running for the stairs. I hit the stairs and I fell to the landing. I pulled myself up and my right side was paralyzed. I grabbed my leg. I couldn't figure out what's happened to me. And finally I unzippered my winter jacket. And I looked, and here through my belt loops, the blood was oozing through. I lifted up my shirt, and I was stabbed with a butcher knife in my lower abdomen, and my insides fell out into my hands. My friends got me to the hospital before some other thug pulled a revolver and almost shot me right between the eyes. Because people were coming, and a commotion. We could hear the sirens. Someone phoned the bulls. I made it to the hospital. I was on my deathbed for 6 weeks. Finally, I got out. 10 days later, I was at home. I couldn't have nothing. I weighed 118 pounds. It felt as though when I sat down, I couldn't sit down for more 4 or 5 minutes, like the bones are going to poke right through my skin. Waiting at home the 10th day. My parents were gone. I heard something. I rolled around on the couch and peeked out. And there were a carload of them same guys. They tried getting in the hospital to do the job that they started to do. But that afternoon, 10 days after my release from the hospital, they came to finish me off real good. I couldn't run to another city because where would I run? They'd catch up with me wherever I went. I didn't want to try and hide in my father's home. They knew I was in there and they'd bust the place up or burn it down to get me out. And I didn't want to messing up my old man's joint. He tried helping me. And so I said, I'm going to end it now. And I started for the door. I started walking down the stairs. I know what it's like to get shot. Your nerve and brain works on electricity. And when the bullet hits, it sends an electric shock through your system. and then like somebody grabs a thick black velvet curtain and draws it over, and down you go. As I walked across the street, I wonder if I'd hear that machine spray me full of lead. I wonder if I'd feel that asphalt crash up beneath my feet. I remember one time, the police were chasing me and some patrol cars were behind me. I pulled into an alley to get away, and there at the end of the alley, a patrol car pulled out. I hit the brakes. I jumped out of the car while it was still running. I turned around and 4 bulls were coming right after me. They started saying, "Halt, in the name of the law, we'll shoot." And I started climbing up this fence. I got to the top of the fence and I knew I'd never get away. And they were shooting. I could hear the bullets cut the air right above my head. "Halt, we'll shoot." And they started shooting. And as I stood at the top of the fence, I knew I'd never get away. So I said, "Ah, you got me." And I fell over the fence. Meanwhile, back in the alley, the bulls, they looked at one another. "Oh, my God," the one said, "I shot him, I shot him, I shot him." I guess he thought I was the first one he ever shot. The other one said, "No, I think it was me." Meanwhile, on the other side of the fence, I was crawling along, sneaking and getting away. But this time, it wasn't quite that way. As I walked out of my house and started going across the asphalt, I knew this was the end. I remember that gray, rainy Saturday afternoon, my head was down, and I was saying, "My God, go ahead and pull the trigger. End it now. Come on. Go ahead and pull the trigger." And all of a sudden, I walked up right in front of them. They said, "Hey, Rudd, you're like a walking corpse, man. There's nothing left to finish off." And they threw me into the back of the car. We went out of town. The driver ran around and opened up the trunk. I thought, "Hey, man, they're getting out the shovels. They're going to really do me in good." But instead, they gave me an overdose. I shouldn't have been here the second time, but kind of my heart pulled me through. But I ended up hooked worse than ever before. For 4 months, I went just like a maniac. I went on capers without even a 6-man. At the end of 4 months, it climaxed that I got busted on 3 very serious charges. I was facing the possibility of 30 solid years behind prison walls. When I walked into the prison, I felt at home. When they ask you to do something, you got to do it or get caught, because lifers play for keeps. A few weeks before this, they cut a man's head off and put it in a paper sack and threw it down into the bullpen. They asked me to get a butcher knife. I did. First day, I snuck a butcher knife out of the meat market in the kitchen underneath the serving tray. The second day, some drugs came in over the wall. I put it in the end of a tube of toothpaste, shot it to the other end of the prison. The next day, I gummed the hacksaw blade up underneath the cleaning bucket and snuck it out for Plochuck and his friend to escape over the wall. A few days later, I sat down and wrote a letter out, put it in my bottom of my tobacco pouch, and through the garbage at the other end, they mail it, which is called shooting a kite over the wall. They nailed me with that and shot me down to the hole. The hole is worse than death row or worse than solitary confinement. It's like a little cage buried in concrete under the prison. I had no clothes, no shoes, no blankets, no mattresses, no nothing. No pencils, papers, books, magazines, nothing but 3 vitamin pills, and every 5 days a few meat and potatoes, just enough to keep you alive. There in the hole, 24 hours a day, a bright shining light shining in on me. You wish to God they'd turn it off. What I'm about to tell you, and then I'm closing, is what brought a turning point in my life and put me on the trip beyond, is what I call it. I go to bed stoned and I wake up stoned. It's an experience that's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, or I've never heard of anything greater happening to anyone else. Before I just close and tell you what happened in that hole, I weighed 118 pounds from being stabbed, from being shot, beat up, and doing drugs so heavy. The vultures had got me when great sores broke out across my whole face and on my shoulders, and deep green cords were sunk deep in your flesh. I was so far gone, they said half my mind was burnt out. I was just about nothing. There in that hole, something happened. Before I tell you, I'd like to ask you one question, and that is this. Why do you think I came to your school today? Because I got paid for it? No, I came free. No one paid me anything of the school administration to come to this school. Again, I say, as I started out, I came because I wanted to be your friend. And I kind of wish that when I was where you are, someone took some time out to tell me what I just told you, but mostly what I'm about to tell you. One of the main reasons I'm here is this. I got a lot of friends that can't be here. I could run through the list and stay here for 6 months. Art Linkletter's daughter. She just dropped 3 little tabs, and the last tab that she dropped, she said, "Man, That's it for me. She wrote home and told her father, I'm not going to do no more. It was already to Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, two of the heavy top rock stars. Is it just happening to them and a few others? No. There's over 3,000 young people in Houston, Texas alone that's undergoing psychiatric treatment because of drugs. The drug scene's really great. Hey man, it's really happening. We're really in. Wouldn't it be a great school if everyone just got doped up? If the whole America just got really spun out and hied up in stone, we could go around and shoot one another, walk out of windows, jump off of towers and really freak out. It'd really be great, wouldn't it? But most of all, the main reason that I'm here is because of my best friend. He'll never be able to be here. I don't have time to tell you, but let me just say this. His name is Arthur Newman, and if you'd like to write and find out about him, you can write the